Picture this for a second: you're behind the wheel of a brand new supercar, cruising through the gleaming streets of a sun-drenched city, and your phone keeps buzzing with payment notifications from sales you made while you were sleeping. The sun is reflecting off the hood, the air conditioning is running perfectly, and somewhere in the background your laptop is sitting open on a cafe table generating income without you touching it. A lot of young content creators on YouTube will tell you that this is exactly what print on demand can do for you overnight, within your first week, maybe even your first 48 hours. I'm not going to make you that kind of promise. I've been in the game a lot longer than most of these creators, and from everything I've witnessed across more than 3 decades of running real businesses with real money on the line, if you're the type of person who chases big flashy headlines and expects results without effort, this business model is going to chew you up and spit you out before you've even found your footing. What I will give you, though, is a thorough, honest, step-by-step roadmap for actually launching a print-on-demand operation from absolute scratch. No prior experience required, no warehouse needed, no inventory piling up in your garage collecting dust and taking up space your car should be using. You'll learn how to create professional-grade products and sell them to customers scattered across every corner of the globe, often while you sleep, eat, or spend time with your family. And this advice is coming from someone who isn't just an armchair commentator who set up a couple of online stores and sold a handful of items to friends. I'm a multi-millionaire entrepreneur who has been actively running businesses for well over 35 years across multiple industries, multiple economic cycles, and multiple technological shifts. I've seen booms, busts, recessions, technological revolutions, the rise of e-commerce, the birth of social media marketing, and every sales trend you can imagine. So the lessons I share here aren't things you can absorb from watching a few YouTube videos. They're hard-won insights that only come from decades of real-world experience, including some very expensive mistakes that I made so you don't have to. I know that starting any kind of side business is intimidating. There's an overwhelming and often contradictory amount of information out there, and most of it is either incomplete, outdated, or specifically designed to sell you a course you don't need. That's precisely why this is the only video on print on demand you need to watch before you take your first real step. I've broken everything down into 10 clear, logically sequenced sections, covering every important detail from the very ground up. Whether you're a complete beginner who has never sold anything online, or someone who's tried and struggled before, there is something genuinely useful here for you. Let's get into it. Part 1. What is print on demand? At its most basic level, print on demand is a risk-free method of building a product-based business that requires virtually zero upfront capital and zero inventory management. Let's say you've always wanted to launch your own clothing line, but you don't have access to a factory that can produce thousands of units at a time, and you certainly don't want your spare room stacked floor to ceiling with unsold inventory that you're praying will eventually move. That's exactly the problem print on demand was designed to solve, and it solves it elegantly. With print on demand, you only pay for a product after a customer has already placed an order and paid you. The supplier then prints your unique custom design onto the physical product and ships it directly to your customer's door. You never touch the stock. You never handle a single box. You never deal with packing tape at midnight or drive to a post office on a rainy Tuesday. The entire fulfillment process happens on the supplier's side without you being physically involved at any point. And the range of products available goes way beyond t-shirts and hoodies. You can create and sell mugs, canvas wall prints, tote bags, phone cases, pillow covers, notebooks, socks, hats, aprons, blankets, yoga mats, pet accessories, water bottles, and much more. New product categories are being added by suppliers regularly, so the creative possibilities are genuinely expansive. This business model is perfect for anyone who wants a legitimate, scalable income stream without the complexity and capital requirements of a traditional product business. You can manage everything from a laptop with a decent internet connection, from your kitchen table, from a coffee shop, or from anywhere in the world you happen to be. Here's the part that I think is genuinely extraordinary when you stop and think about it. As your revenue grows, the amount of time you actually spend working doesn't have to scale up proportionally. A store with 500 listings and strong SEO can generate sales around the clock without you manually processing anything. You can potentially earn significantly more without burning significantly more hours. That's the definition of a scalable business, and historically, scalable businesses were only available to people with substantial capital to invest. Print on demand makes it accessible to almost anyone. The market data supports this enthusiasm completely. The global print-on-demand industry is currently valued at close to $6 billion, and talented, hard-working people fail miserably because they built excellent businesses in declining or stagnant industries. No amount of skill compensates for swimming against a structural current. Print-on-demand is the opposite of that situation. It's a rapidly expanding space, and even a fairly average entrepreneur who applies consistent effort can build meaningful wealth by riding a wave this large. To get started successfully, you need 5 core components working together in harmony: a product that people actually want to buy and are already searching for, a compelling, well-researched design that makes your product stand out from the competition, a platform or storefront where customers can discover and purchase your product, a reliable supplier who handles printing, packaging, and shipping on your behalf, real, paying customers who are actively looking for exactly what you're selling. Don't worry, we're going to work through every single one of these today in detail, with practical examples you can act on immediately. Part 2, How to Find a Winning Product. This is always the first question new print-on-demand sellers ask, and it's absolutely the right place to start because it sets the foundation for everything that follows. Your product selection is ultimately what determines whether your store generates hundreds of consistent sales each month or sits completely invisible with 0 orders and 0 momentum. Based on everything I've learned across years of selling physical and digital products across multiple platforms, a winning product in print-on-demand actually has 2 distinct and equally important components: the product category itself, and the specific design applied to it. Most beginners make the mistake of treating all product categories as roughly equal opportunities, but that's a costly oversimplification. You need to be genuinely strategic and analytical about which category you choose to enter, because your choice directly affects your margin potential, your competitive landscape, and your ability to sustain the business long-term. You might be thinking, why not just list products across every category and use similar designs throughout? While that approach might seem efficient or comprehensive on the surface, it's actually a trap that kills momentum before it has a chance to build. Your early designs probably won't be strong enough to carry everything simultaneously. You'll spread your energy and limited time across too many fronts without generating enough traction in any single area. The result is a store that feels scattered, ranks poorly in every category, and teaches you very little about what's actually working. Instead, pick one category and go genuinely deep on it. Make it your entire world for the first phase of the business. Learn its best-selling styles, understand its buyer psychology, study its seasonal patterns, and master what makes products in that space succeed. Once you've hit a consistent $10,000 per month from that single category, you can start duplicating your best-performing designs onto other product types and potentially launch a second store. The principle here is simple: it's far better to be the undisputed master of one lane than to drift aimlessly across many lanes without excelling in any of them. Top-performing Etsy sellers almost universally follow this focused approach, and it's not a coincidence. The same focused logic applies to color variants within individual products. Personally, I would never offer more than 7 color options per product listing, and often fewer is better. Offering too many choices triggers what behavioral psychologists call decision paralysis. The customer feels overwhelmed by the number of options, spends too long deliberating, and ultimately clicks away without purchasing anything. Fewer, carefully chosen variants with strong visual contrast in your photos often outperform massive color libraries. Let me help you eliminate some categories right away so you can make a smarter, more confident choice from the beginning. Greeting cards and calendars, skip them entirely. They're inherently seasonal products, which means your income will spike dramatically during certain periods and collapse to near zero during others. You want a product with consistent, year-round demand that doesn't require you to reinvent your catalog every few months. Mugs, basic phone cases, and standard stationery items, these categories tend to have relatively low retail price points, which squeezes your profit margins down to levels that make it very difficult to build a meaningful income. My personal rule of thumb is to target a minimum of 20 to 30% profit margin on every product after all costs are accounted for. Now, low-margin products aren't an absolute disqualification from your list. Volume can compensate for thin margins if you execute at a high enough level and build enough catalog depth. To illustrate this with a concrete example, there's a store currently ranked at the very top of Etsy's organic search results for mugs. When I analyze their publicly visible sales data, they appear to be generating somewhere around $30,000 per month in revenue. Assuming a 15% net margin, that translates to approximately $4,500 in monthly profit, which is genuinely decent money for what is essentially a semi-passive operation. If they've managed to optimize their supply chain and achieve 30% margins, the profit figure looks considerably better. That said, when evaluating categories purely on their margin potential, apparel and wall art consistently emerge as the clear frontrunners. It's dramatically easier to command premium pricing in these categories because the perceived value is higher and the price anchoring from comparable products gives you more room to price ambitiously. High-end fashion brands, streetwear labels, and contemporary artists have been exploiting this pricing psychology for decades. Let me show you actual numbers from my own experience to make this concrete. I sold wall art prints through a supplier called Gelato, a company I'll get into in much greater detail shortly. I listed one of my prints at $49.99. My production cost including printing came to $25.39, and shipping added another $6.98, bringing my total cost per unit to $32.37. After accounting for Etsy's various fees, I netted $12.42 per sale, which works out to roughly a 25% margin. As you can see, even with a reasonably priced product in a strong category, costs accumulate quickly and eat into profit. This is precisely why starting with a high-margin category matters enormously from day one rather than discovering the problem after months of work. Since I've covered wall art extensively in a previous video, let's commit today to focusing on apparel, specifically t-shirts, as our category of choice, and work through the entire process using that as our example. Part 3. Choosing the right niche within apparel. Now that we've settled on apparel as our category, we need to drill down further into a specific sub-niche. Here's a fundamental truth that every successful print-on-demand seller eventually learns: nobody wants a plain blank t-shirt. The blank t-shirt market is dominated by wholesale suppliers serving businesses, and you have no competitive advantage there. Your job is to give specific groups of people a deeply compelling reason to want your particular shirt, a reason rooted in identity, humor, passion, community, or occasion. The most reliable way to do that is by tapping into something your target customer is already genuinely passionate about, something that forms part of how they see themselves and how they want others to see them. People buy t-shirts that say something about who they are. Your job is to figure out what your audience wants to say. You might think initially, I'll make a shirt that appeals to fans of a major film franchise or TV show. That instinct is correct in its underlying logic. You're tapping into an existing passionate community, but the execution of that specific idea can land you in serious legal and financial trouble. The specific area to be aware of is trademark infringement. Before you finalize any design concept, you must run a trademark search. This is non-negotiable. Even if your idea doesn't draw directly from a well-known franchise, specific phrases, slogans, and even certain graphic elements can be registered trademarks owned by companies or individuals who actively pursue infringers. The good news is that trademark searches are completely free and take about 5 minutes once you know where to look. I strongly recommend checking both the UK Intellectual Property Office database and the United States Patent and Trademark Office database, since many of your customers will come from both markets. On the USPTO website, navigate to the Trademark Search tool, select Word Mark Search, type in any phrase you're considering using, and change the results filter to show only active marks. If nothing comes back as active, you're clear to use that phrase. Make this a habit for every piece of text that appears in your designs. Now, here's where I want to challenge you with something that might feel genuinely counterintuitive, especially if you have any kind of creative background. When it comes to finding your niche and developing your initial product designs, I want you to actively resist the urge to be original. I know that statement runs completely counter to everything the education system spent years trying to instill in you. Schools are designed to reward independent thinking, penalize copying, and celebrate novelty. In the commercial world of product businesses, however, that instinct will hurt you far more than it helps. There's a well-known book called Steal Like an Artist, by Austin Kleon that articulates this idea beautifully in a creative context. It's built on the insight that every great creative work is built on the foundation of everything that came before it, that originality is always synthesis rather than invention from nothing. This principle applies even more forcefully in entrepreneurship. Attempting to be radically original in your product selection is actually the single most common trap that kills new businesses before they ever gain traction. Beginners convince themselves they've spotted a brilliant untapped opportunity that everyone else has somehow missed. They pour weeks of effort into building something the market simply doesn't want. Here's the hard truth: in most cases, you didn't discover a gap in the market, you found an empty space because nobody wants what you're thinking of selling. Empty space is not the same as opportunity. Part 4: How to research what's already selling. Your job as a new print-on-demand seller isn't to invent demand from nothing, it's to identify where demand already exists, understand what's driving it, and then position yourself within that space with your own execution. Etsy is one of the most valuable free market research tools available to you, because unlike Amazon or many other platforms, it displays meaningful sales data publicly through its review system. Let's walk through exactly how to do this research effectively. Search for women's t-shirts on Etsy and sort the results by number of reviews. The review count is your proxy for sales volume, and it allows you to identify what's genuinely resonating with buyers rather than just what looks good in a thumbnail. Right away in those results, you'll notice some listings that clearly violate trademark law, famous superhero logos, recognizable character imagery from major film studios, phrases from popular television shows. Ignore those entirely and don't be tempted to follow their example. Yes, some of them will have impressive review counts and apparently strong sales. But pursuing that route will eventually result in your store being suspended, your listings being taken down, legal demand letters arriving in your inbox, or worse. The short-term revenue is never worth the long-term exposure. Focus instead on stores with large volumes of clearly original, independently created designs. When you find a promising store, click through to their main page and filter their customer reviews by most recent date. This is the key move that most beginners miss. Filtering by recency rather than helpfulness or star rating shows you what is selling right now, in the current market, not what was popular 2 years ago when the store first gained traction. Spend a dedicated block of about an hour doing this research across 5 to 10 different stores, saving screenshots of everything that catches your eye and noting the design elements, color choices, typography,
styles, and phrases that appear repeatedly across successful listings. That here's a simple but remarkably powerful formula I use to estimate the scale of a product's commercial success. Take the total review count for any individual listing and multiply it by
10. That ratio gives you a reasonable approximation of total units sold over the product's lifetime, since most buyers never leave reviews. For example, if a t-shirt design has 130 reviews, the seller has probably moved something in the region of 1,300 units of that specific design. If that shirt was listed at $33.56 and the seller achieved a 30% profit margin on each sale, that single design has generated approximately $13,000 in total profit. From one design, which was probably created in under an hour using a free tool and publicly available inspiration. Now multiply that across a catalog of 50 well-researched designs in a focused niche. Or 100 designs. Or 200. The mathematics of scale become genuinely compelling very quickly. Here are 15 specific sub-niches that consistently perform well on print-on-demand platforms. All of them tend to have passionate, engaged buyer communities, strong gifting dynamics that drive repeat purchases, and plenty of creative room for distinctive execution. Woodworking and carpentry humor. The tradesperson community is enormous and dramatically underserved by most print-on-demand sellers, which creates real pricing power. Dog breed-specific apparel, Labrador mom, Golden Retriever dad, specific breed identity products perform incredibly well because the passion is so intense and personal. Nurse and healthcare worker shirts, an extremely loyal, community-driven buyer group with strong gifting behavior particularly around holidays and National Nurses Week. Gardening and plant lover designs, year-round demand, tends to skew toward buyers with disposable income who are happy to pay for quality. Teacher appreciation and education humor, a massive gifting market that spikes reliably around back-to-school season, Teacher Appreciation Week, and the end of the school year. Hiking, trail running, and outdoor adventure, passionate lifestyle community with a strong visual identity that translates beautifully onto apparel. Mental health awareness and self-care, growing rapidly in cultural relevance, especially among younger demographics who wear their values as literal statements. Retirement milestone celebrations, retired teacher, every day is a weekend, finally free, occasion-driven purchasing with clear gifting intent. Fishing and hunting humor, a deeply dedicated niche with highly engaged communities who are famously enthusiastic about expressing their hobby identity. Cat lover designs, reliably one of the top-performing pet niches on Etsy year after year, with a particularly loyal repeat buyer base. Book lovers and reading culture, bookish content performs exceptionally well across Etsy, Pinterest, and Instagram, and the community is extremely vocal and engaged. Running, marathon culture, and endurance sports, passionate, community-driven, high average spend per buyer, and strong gifting around race milestones. Cooking, baking, and chef humor, broad gifting appeal, works equally well for professional coup. One critical clarification before we move on, you are absolutely not copying other sellers' designs. Think of the process as mixing a cocktail rather than copying a recipe. A good bartender doesn't pour someone else's finished drink into a glass and call it their own, they study what flavors work well together and create their own combination. You're taking inspiration from multiple completely separate sources and blending proven elements into something that represents your own execution and creative judgment. Take a font style from one design, a color palette from another, a compositional structure from a third, a phrase archetype from a fourth. The blend is entirely yours. If you borrow too heavily from any single source, you risk a copyright or design theft complaint. Steal strategically from many sources, and you're simply doing what every successful designer in history has always done. Part 5, How to Create Your Designs. Once you've done thorough market research and have a clear picture of the design elements, color palettes, typography styles, and phrases that resonate in your chosen niche, it's time to actually build your products. This is the stage where a lot of people freeze up, convincing themselves they need to be a trained graphic designer with years of Adobe Illustrator experience to produce anything worth selling. You absolutely do not. Some of the best-selling designs on Etsy are strikingly simple, a few words in the right font, at the right size, in the right color, on the right product. There are 4 practical creation methods available to you, and you can combine them in whatever proportion suits your individual skill level, available time, and budget. Method 1, Free Design Tools, Canva. Canva is a browser-based drag-and-drop design platform that genuinely requires zero prior graphic design experience. The learning curve is measured in minutes, not days. Start by using an AI tool like ChatGPT to generate a list of niche-relevant quotes, phrases, or taglines relevant to your chosen sub-niche. Bring those into Canva, select a font style and layout inspired by your market research screenshots, choose colors that match the palette you saw performing well in competing listings, and assemble your design. When you're happy with the result, export it as a PNG file with a transparent background so it's ready for your print-on-demand supplier. A practiced creator can produce solid designs in 15 to 30 minutes each using this workflow. Method 2, Buy pre-made templates or source files. If you encounter a design style during your research that you particularly want to emulate, use Google's reverse image search to find the original source. In many cases, you'll discover that the graphic elements were originally sold as commercial stock design files on marketplaces like Creative Market, Design Bundles, or Envato. Purchasing a template or graphic pack and customizing it with your own text, colors, and modifications is entirely legitimate and can produce excellent results quickly, particularly if you're not confident building from scratch. Method 3, AI Image Generation with Midjourney. This is currently my personally preferred tool for creating original graphic design elements for print-on-demand products. Midjourney produces strikingly high-quality, genuinely original visual artwork from text prompts, and the commercial usage license is included in their paid plan starting at approximately $10 per month. The creative ceiling is remarkably high once you understand how to write effective prompts. To access Midjourney, you need a Discord account. Visit the Midjourney website and click Join Beta. This connects you to the Midjourney server within Discord. I also recommend joining my free community group on Discord, which currently has around 40,000 members actively discussing business strategies, side income ideas, and everything related to building income online. Search Mark's Business Community and request to join. Once you're set up, add the Midjourney bot to your own private Discord server so you have a clean, organized workspace. In your settings, use / to open the command menu, navigate to Settings, select Model version 6, and set stylization to high for the most polished, professionally finished output. When writing your prompts, be highly specific about style, background color, composition, and mood. For example, if you want a graphic for a nature-themed t-shirt, you might prompt, butterflies arranged in the shape of a tornado, silhouette style, clean white background, suitable for apparel printing. Experiment with multiple variations using the V buttons until you find something strong, then upscale your chosen result with the U button for maximum resolution. Before uploading to your supplier, run the image through a background removal tool. I personally use photoroom.com, which handles this automatically in seconds. Method 4. Hire a freelance designer. Platforms like Fiverr and Upwork give you access to experienced, professional graphic designers for very reasonable rates, often $15 to $50 per design depending on complexity and the designer's experience level. This is a perfectly viable approach, especially once you have validated product ideas you're confident enough in to invest real money developing further. The absolute key to getting good results from freelancers is providing an extremely detailed, specific brief. Include reference images of existing designs you like, the exact color palette you want, the precise dimensions required by your supplier, the overall mood and aesthetic you're going for, and any text that needs to appear in the design. Vague briefs consistently produce mediocre results that require expensive revisions. Specific, detailed briefs produce exactly what you need on the first attempt. All 4 methods are legitimate and effective. Your optimal choice depends on your current skill set, how much time you're willing to invest in learning, and what budget you have available at your current stage. Part 6. Choosing the right print-on-demand supplier. Your choice of supplier is arguably the single most consequential operational decision you'll make in this business, and it deserves far more careful thought than most beginners give it. Your supplier is responsible for the physical quality of every product you sell, how quickly it arrives at your customer's door, how professionally it's packaged, and ultimately how your customers feel about the entire experience of buying from you. Choose the wrong supplier, and you'll find yourself drowning in refund requests, negative reviews, and customer service nightmares regardless of how beautiful your designs are or how well your marketing performs. Here's where I diverge significantly from most YouTube channels covering this topic. The majority of content creators recommend whichever supplier offers the lowest base cost per unit. I fundamentally disagree with that approach, and I'll explain exactly why. Low-price suppliers almost invariably cut corners somewhere in their operation, whether it's print quality, color accuracy, fabric quality, packaging standards, shipping reliability, or customer support responsiveness. The old principle of, buy cheap, buy twice, applies with remarkable consistency in this industry. Every order that gets lost in transit, arrives damaged, shows up with faded or misaligned printing, or takes 3 weeks longer than expected costs you money in replacements and refunds, damages your store's review rating, and most importantly undermines the customer trust that your entire business depends on. I personally tested Gelato extensively before recommending them, and I was genuinely and pleasantly surprised across every dimension I evaluated. Print quality on both apparel and wall art was excellent and consistent across multiple test orders. Delivery was fast and reliable. The platform's interface is clean and intuitive, making product setup and design uploading genuinely straightforward. The overall experience from uploading a design to receiving the finished physical product was seamless in a way that not every supplier can claim. One particularly significant advantage of Gelato as a supplier is their global production network. They have manufacturing facilities in over 32 countries, which means that more than 90% of all orders are produced in the same country where the customer is located. That dramatically reduces both shipping times and shipping costs compared to suppliers who manufacture everything from a single centralized location and then ship internationally. Faster delivery means happier customers, fewer "where is my order" messages, and better reviews. Here's how to set up your first product on Gelato. Log into your account and navigate to the product catalog from the left-hand menu. Select apparel, then men's or women's t-shirts depending on your target audience. For most general-purpose graphic designs, I recommend the Heavy Blend Unisex Crew Neck Tee, which is consistently their best-selling product for good reason. It's priced at nearly $2 less than their premium alternatives while delivering print quality that customers are genuinely happy with, and those $2 per unit translate directly into improved margin at scale. For print method, direct-to-garment printing is the right choice for most graphic and text-based designs. If you're creating something where a textured, raised premium feel adds genuine value to the product, like a minimalist logo design on a high-end hoodie, embroidery is available but costs meaningfully more per unit. Reserve embroidery for specific designs where the tactile quality genuinely justifies a higher retail price and makes sense in your product photography. Start with one color and one size to confirm everything looks right, then replicate the setup across your chosen color variants in all available sizes. Gelato's built-in Mockup Studio, which we'll discuss in the next section, lets you generate lifestyle product images without ordering physical samples for every single variation. Part 7, Where to Sell Your Products, Etsy versus Shopify. This is where most online creators dramatically oversimplify the conversation by picking either Etsy or Shopify, declaring it the obvious winner, and moving on. The reality is considerably more nuanced, and the right platform choice depends entirely on where you are in your entrepreneurial journey, what your current resources are, and what your goals look like over the next 12 to 24 months. The case for Etsy. Etsy receives over 460 million visits per month from buyers actively searching for unique, handcrafted, and customized products. In 2022, merchandise-style products, which encompasses the vast majority of print-on-demand categories, accounted for 26% of all platform sales. Equally important, 45% of all transactions on Etsy involved international buyers, meaning the platform inherently gives you access to a genuinely global customer base from the moment your first listing goes live. This is a profound structural advantage for new sellers who haven't yet built any kind of audience or marketing capability. You don't need to generate your own traffic. You don't need to build an email list before you've made your first sale. You don't need to run expensive advertising campaigns to validate whether your products have market appeal. You simply need to get your listings visible enough within Etsy's internal search results to capture some of the enormous existing demand. The failure rate on Etsy is undeniably high, but in my observation and experience, it's almost never the platform's fault. The overwhelming majority of sellers who fail to generate meaningful sales simply didn't conduct proper market research before uploading their products. They listed items based on personal aesthetic preference or incomplete trend chasing rather than rigorous market data analysis. The market responded to their guesswork by ignoring them, and they concluded the platform was oversaturated rather than examining their own approach. If you use the research methodology I've outlined in this guide, you have a structural advantage over the majority of your competitors before you've even created your first design. The case for Shopify. Shopify is your own fully independent branded storefront on the internet, completely separate from any marketplace. When a customer makes a purchase through your Shopify store and opts in during checkout, you capture their email address and can build a direct marketing relationship with them for years into the future. This data asset compounds in value over time. Industry wisdom consistently suggests that an actively marketed email subscriber is worth approximately $1 per month in revenue to a business that communicates with them regularly and relevantly. On Etsy, you don't own that customer relationship at all. You facilitate the transaction, but the customer data belongs to Etsy. Additionally, a Shopify store completely removes the competitive context that is unavoidable and by design on Etsy. When a potential customer lands on your Etsy listing, they are surrounded by your direct competitors in the sidebar, in the More from this shop section, in the You might also like recommendations. Price comparison is frictionless. Competitive alternatives are always just one click away. On your Shopify store, if someone arrives with purchasing intent, the only options in front of them are yours. That's a fundamentally different and more favorable sales environment. My clear recommendation. Despite the compelling advantages of Shopify, my strong recommendation for anyone starting out is to begin with Etsy and treat it as your market validation and learning phase. Get your first 1,000 products listed, yes, 1,000, before you draw any firm conclusions about what's working. At Etsy's listing fee of 20 cents per product, that represents a $200 investment in market data that will teach you more practical, actionable information than any expensive course or mentorship program. Identify your top performers, understand why they're working, and then build your Shopify store around proven products rather than assumptions. Launching directly on Shopify without Etsy validation is dangerous because when your sales disappoint, and they will initially, you won't be able to identify whether the problem is the product itself, the design quality, the pricing, the marketing targeting, the copy, or something else entirely. Etsy removes that ambiguity ruthlessly. If you're getting traffic and no conversions, the product or design needs work. If you're not getting traffic, the keywords need work. The feedback loop is direct, immediate, and free. Think of Etsy as a vast fishing pond stocked with willing buyers. Cast many lines in many directions. Pay close attention to what's actually biting. When you've definitively identified what the fish want, that's when you take those proven lures and go out into the deeper, wider ocean with a Shopify store and a paid advertising budget behind you. Part 8, How to maximize your visibility and sales on Etsy. Once your store is registered, your supplier is connected, and your initial products are uploaded, there are 3 powerful optimization practices that will significantly accelerate your results compared to sellers who skip these steps. Practice 1, High quality, professional mock-up images. Your listing photographs are your virtual storefront window, and on a visual-first platform like Etsy, they are quite possibly the single biggest factor in whether a browsing customer clicks your listing or scrolls past it. Customers cannot physically touch, try on, or inspect your product before buying. They are making a purchasing decision based entirely on the images you provide. Lifestyle mock-ups, images showing your product being worn by a model in a realistic, relatable setting, or displayed in a contextually appropriate environment, dramatically and consistently outperform flat product shots on plain backgrounds. Lifestyle mock-ups also do something subtly powerful for your perceived value. They make your product feel handcrafted, intentional, and personal rather than algorithmically generated and mass-produced. On a platform where buyers are specifically looking for unique and artisanal products, that feeling of authenticity matters enormously and can justify a significantly higher price point. Gelato's built-in mock-up studio generates a wide range of professional lifestyle and flat-lay images for every product in their catalog, so you can create multiple strong listing images without ordering physical samples for every design variation. Choose mock-up environments that match the visual world of your target niche. A carpentry humor t-shirt should appear in a workshop or outdoor setting, not against a minimalist white studio background. Practice 2, Strategic keyword research and optimization. Etsy functions fundamentally as a search engine with an integrated purchasing function. The platform's internal algorithm matches the search terms buyers type into the search bar against the words used in your product titles, tags, attributes, and descriptions. The more precisely and comprehensively you describe what your product is, who it's designed for, what occasion it suits, and what aesthetic it represents, the more likely your listing is to appear in front of someone actively ready to purchase. Here's a practical, effective approach to keyword research that doesn't require any paid tools. Go to the high-performing competitor listings you identified during your market research phase and read their titles and tags carefully. Document every phrase they're using, product type, target recipient, occasion, humor style, material, and any other descriptors. Copy the directly relevant phrases into your own title, description, and all third-party behavior. Practice 3, Building a premium, trustworthy brand identity. Trust is the single most valuable intangible asset in e-commerce, and it's built or destroyed primarily through visual signals before a customer has read a single word of your product description. A customer who doesn't know you is making a rapid, largely subconscious judgment about whether you're someone worth buying from. A store that communicates professionalism, consistency, and clear identity earns that trust. A store that looks rushed, generic, or incoherent does not, regardless of how good the actual products are. For your store name, use Shopify's free name generator as a creative starting point, then run your top candidates through a username availability checker to confirm they're free across Etsy, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and the .com domain. You want consistent branding across all platforms from day one so that growth on one channel reinforces recognition on all the others. For your logo and banner, Canva's template library provides excellent professional options that can be customized in under an hour. The goal isn't visual complexity, it's clarity of identity. Your store should have a recognizable aesthetic and a clear niche focus that tells a browser within 3 seconds exactly what kind of products you sell and who they're for. Think about the world's most trusted brands. Apple doesn't sell 1,000 different categories of products. Their entire carefully maintained visual identity reinforces one coherent message. Your store needs its own equivalent of that focus coherence, not because you're Apple, but because the psychological principle behind brand consistency applies at every scale of business. Part 9: Marketing your products without wasting money. One of the most common questions I receive from new print-on-demand sellers is about paid advertising: when to start, how much to spend, which platforms to use. I understand the appeal of paid advertising deeply. It promises a direct, controllable lever between money spent and sales generated. In theory, you put $100 in and more than $100 comes out. The reality, particularly for beginners, is considerably more complicated. In my experience and observation, most new sellers who jump aggressively into paid advertising before they're ready end up burning through budget with disappointing results for one of two reasons. Either they start running ads before they've made any meaningful organic sales, which means the product hasn't been validated by real market demand and the ads are pushing something that may have a fundamental problem. Or they achieve sales only while running ads, and the moment they pause their campaign, revenue completely evaporates, which means they've rented customers rather than built a business. Neither scenario represents a sustainable, scalable business. Neither scenario is what you're building toward. My philosophy across 35+ years of business has always been to build on organic foundations first, and to use paid amplification only to accelerate what's already demonstrably working. Right now, in the current media landscape, this approach is particularly powerful because organic reach on social media platforms, specifically short-form video content, is at an extraordinary high point. Platforms like TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts are actively hungry for engaging content and willing to distribute it to potentially millions of people at absolutely zero cost. This window will almost certainly narrow over the coming years as these platforms increasingly push creators toward paid promotion to maintain their reach. Use it aggressively and strategically while it remains open. The most effective organic marketing strategy specifically for print-on-demand products is short-form video content, and the key principle is storytelling rather than product showcasing. Don't just create a pretty 30-second clip of someone wearing your t-shirt against a nice background. Create a narrative, something funny, emotionally resonant, surprising, or highly relatable to your target niche community. People open TikTok and Instagram to be entertained, not to browse a catalog. If your content genuinely entertains them, the platform's algorithm will push it to a much wider audience than just your followers, and the sales follow naturally from that visibility. I strongly recommend ordering a small batch of physical product samples from your supplier early in your business development, which I would advise regardless as a quality check. Use those samples to create your initial video content and establish your brand's visual identity on social media. Once you've identified which organic videos generate sustained engagement, consistent saves, and measurable traffic to your store, that's your reliable signal that the creative concept resonates with your audience. That's the right moment to amplify those specific pieces of content with a paid promotion budget. You'll be investing money behind creative that you already know works, which is exponentially more efficient than guessing in the dark. Part 10: The most costly mistake and responding to the critics. Let me address something directly, because I see this particular mistake undermining more print-on-demand businesses than almost anything else I've discussed in this guide. The mistake is focusing on revenue rather than profit. People get genuinely seduced by the large revenue numbers that get thrown around in this space. They see a screenshot claiming $80,000 in monthly sales and something lights up in their brain. But revenue is, in isolation, almost entirely meaningless as a measure of business success. I have a strong suspicion, based on patterns I've observed over many years, that a significant percentage of the gurus and supposedly successful dropshippers sharing those revenue screenshots are either barely breaking even on their actual product sales or actively losing money, while compensating by monetizing their audiences through courses, coaching programs, and affiliate commissions. Revenue without margin is theater. The only number that genuinely matters in this or any business is net profit margin. Protect it with every decision you make. Etsy's fee structure alone can quietly devastate your economics if you're not accounting for it precisely and building it into your pricing from the beginning. The platform charges a transaction fee of 6.5% applied to both the product price and the shipping cost. Additionally, there's a payment processing fee of approximately 3% of the total amount collected from the customer. If your products generate sales through Etsy's off-platform advertising network, which the platform participates in by default, they take an additional 15% on those specific transactions. You can opt out of the off-site advertising program once your annual sales exceed a certain threshold, but below that level it's mandatory and needs to be accounted for in your margin calculations. When you stack these fees on top of your production cost, shipping cost, and the listing fee of 20 cents per product, the math gets tight with remarkable speed. This is why every pricing decision needs to start with your desired margin and work backwards to your retail price, not the other way around. Beyond platform fees, there's one additional cost that I see beginners almost universally ignoring, often until they're so discouraged they want to quit: the real cost of their own time. Your time is not free. It has genuine economic value. If you spent 100 hours building and managing your store last month and generated $400 in profit, you made $4 per hour for your effort. That is below minimum wage in most countries, and if you were honest with yourself about it, you probably wouldn't have accepted that job offer. I'm not sharing this to discourage you. In the early stages of any business, working for less than your time is objectively worth is sometimes unavoidable and can be a necessary investment in future returns. But you need to track it consciously. Every month, divide your total profit by the hours you invested. Watch that number trend upward over time as your systems improve, your catalog grows, and your expertise deepens. If the number isn't moving upward, something in your approach needs to change. Responding to the critics. I want to address a comment I see regularly on my videos about print on demand, which goes something like this: Mark, you need to be honest with your audience. This market is completely saturated. Side hustles are dead. Stop giving people false hope and empty dreams. I appreciate the directness, and I want to respond to each element of that critique genuinely. On the absence of quick riches, I agree completely and without reservation. I know this truth more personally than most. I grew up without money, without formal qualifications, and without any particular advantages. It took me years of consistent, grinding, sometimes brutal effort to build what I have today. None of it was easy or fast. If someone had shown me at age 20 a fully realistic picture of exactly how hard the road ahead would be, I honestly might not have started. That's part of why I choose to emphasize possibilities and outcomes rather than obstacles and difficulties, not to deceive anyone, but because the psychological state that gets you out the door and taking action is the one that says, this is possible for me, rather than, this is going to be incredibly hard and most people fail. On market saturation, I respectfully and firmly disagree. Every serious, commercially viable market is competitive. Competition is not saturation, competition is confirmation of demand. It means buyers exist and money is being spent. What competition means practically is that you need to be better, more targeted, more focused, or more creative than what's already out there. That's a solvable problem, not a death sentence. The print-on-demand market is measurably growing, not contracting. The people claiming it's saturated have almost invariably either not listed enough products, not done proper research methodology, or gave up before their data was large enough to be meaningful. If you haven't listed at least 1,000 products using solid research and optimization practices, you genuinely don't yet have enough information to reach any conclusions about market conditions. On whether side hustles are viable, look at the evidence rather than the sentiment. I have a dedicated video where 7 of my own students share detailed accounts of how they're each generating thousands of dollars per month through diverse side income streams, most of them built from zero over 12 to 18 months of consistent effort. The opportunity hasn't evaporated. What's changed is that the path requires more skill, more persistence, and more strategic thinking than it did 5 years ago. That's not a reason to avoid it, that's a reason to commit to doing it properly. Stay on the path. Upload consistently. Improve your research and design quality every single week. Let the market's feedback teach you what your customers actually want. And when you eventually experience your first strong month of profitable, scalable sales, and if you do the work, you will, every difficult week that led up to that moment will make complete and total sense. If this was valuable to you, subscribe for more content like this. I'll see you in the next video.